You won't believe what went down when the HOA cop kept parking his truck right on our family ranch, on land that's been in our family for generations. This wasn't just some random visitor or careless neighbor. It was someone who's supposed to enforce the rules, but instead kept breaking them in the most frustrating way. Every time we'd think the problem was solved, there he'd be again, right where he didn't belong. It got to a point where my grandpa couldn't just stand by and watch anymore. Now, Grandpa is a calm, patient man, but when he sees something wrong that affects his family and land, he acts. And he acts in a way you wouldn't expect. One afternoon, with the sun beating down and tensions rising, Grandpa made a bold move that shocked everyone around. He drove his old truck straight into the creek, right on that same spot where the HOA cop kept parking. It wasn't just about the truck, it was a message. But what happened after that? Did it finally stop the parking mess, or did things get even crazier? Stick around because this story isn't over yet. There's more to this ranch showdown that'll leave you questioning who's really in charge, and what happens when the people who enforce the rules don't follow them themselves. To really understand why Grandpa had to take such a wild step, you need to know what led up to all this. Our ranch isn't just a piece of land. It's where we grew up, where stories were told, and where every tree and creek holds memories. We've always respected our neighbors and followed the rules set by the Homeowners Association, or HOA. But the problem started when this particular HOA cop began parking on our property day after day, like it was his personal spot. It blocked access to parts of the ranch and even made it hard for us to use the land the way we always had. We tried talking to him, tried reporting it, but nothing seemed to work. The HOA was supposed to be fair and keep peace, but somehow this guy kept getting away with ignoring the rules. It felt like he thought he was above them. Every time he parked there, it wasn't just inconvenient. It felt like a power move, a way to mark his territory on our family's land. Grandpa's decision to drive his truck into the creek wasn't just about stopping the parking. It was about standing up to that unfairness, about protecting what's ours. But after that day, the whole situation got even more complicated. Some neighbors started taking sides, and the HOA itself seemed to be watching closely. What would happen next? Would Grandpa's bold move change anything, or would it just stir up more trouble? The story is far from over. To really understand why Grandpa had to take such a wild step, you need to know what led up to all this. Our ranch isn't just a piece of land. It's where we grew up, where stories were told, and where every tree and creek holds memories. We've always respected our neighbors and followed the rules set by the Homeowners Association, or HOA. But the problem started when this particular HOA cop began parking on our property day after day, like it was his personal spot. It blocked access to parts of the ranch and even made it hard for us to use the land the way we always had. We tried talking to him, tried reporting it, but nothing seemed to work. The HOA was supposed to be fair and keep peace, but somehow this guy kept getting away with ignoring the rules. It felt like he thought he was above them. Every time he parked there, it wasn't just inconvenient. It felt like a power move, a way to mark his territory on our family's land. Grandpa's decision to drive his truck into the creek wasn't just about stopping the parking. It was about standing up to that unfairness, about protecting what's ours. But after that day, the whole situation got even more complicated. Some neighbors started taking sides, and the HOA itself seemed to be watching closely. What would happen next? Would Grandpa's bold move change anything, or would it just stir up more trouble? The story is far from over. After Grandpa drove his truck into the creek, things got complicated fast. The HOA cop didn't just back off like we hoped. Instead, he seemed even more determined to keep parking there, as if daring us to do something else. Some neighbors started whispering about who was right and who was wrong, and suddenly the whole community was divided. Some said Grandpa went too far, while others quietly admitted they'd been frustrated with the HOA's unfair treatment for a long time. It wasn't just about parking anymore. It felt like a fight over respect and control. Meanwhile, the HOA board got involved, sending letters and scheduling meetings. But those meetings didn't feel fair. The cop, being part of the HOA, had a lot of influence, and every time we tried to bring up our concerns, it felt like they were twisting the story against us. Grandpa, who's usually calm, started getting more frustrated. He wasn't just defending the land, he was fighting for fairness and standing up against the power imbalance that had been brewing for years. On top of that, some neighbors who were on the fence started sharing their own stories about run-ins with the HOA. It was clear this wasn't just our ranch, it was a bigger problem in the neighborhood. The tension kept growing, and every day felt like walking on a tightrope, unsure when the next big conflict would explode. And through it all, the question lingered: how far would Grandpa and the family have to go to protect what's theirs, and what would be the cost? The real battle was just beginning. Days turned into weeks, and the situation on the ranch grew more tense than ever. Every morning, we'd wake up wondering if the HOA cop's truck would be parked on our land again, blocking the driveway or making it impossible to get to the far side of the property. Grandpa was watching closely, ready to act if needed, but even he seemed to be reaching the limit of his patience. The community meetings had become heated, with voices raised and old grudges resurfacing. It felt like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath, waiting to see how this would all unfold. At the same time, the HOA sent another formal notice demanding that Grandpa pay for the damages to the creek caused by his truck. It was frustrating because, to us, the truck in the creek was just a symbol of standing up to unfairness. But now it was being used as a weapon against us. Some neighbors started avoiding us, afraid to get involved, while others quietly supported our side but wouldn't speak up openly. The whole atmosphere felt like a powder keg ready to explode. One evening, Grandpa got a call that the HOA cop was planning to bring more people onto the ranch, saying they had official business and wouldn't leave until they were done. That night, we all sat around the kitchen table, knowing this could be the moment everything changed. The tension was thick, and nobody knew if this confrontation would finally end the parking nightmare or push us into something much bigger. The next few hours would decide everything, and none of us could predict what would happen. Just when we thought things couldn't get any more intense, the next morning brought a shock that no one saw coming. Before the sun even rose, we noticed fresh tire tracks leading onto the ranch. Not just the usual truck, but multiple vehicles, some marked with official HOA logos. The HOA cop hadn't come alone. He'd brought a whole crew, claiming they were there to inspect the property. But it felt more like a takeover. Grandpa and the family rushed outside, ready to confront them, but the group was already spreading out, blocking paths and setting up temporary barricades. It was clear this wasn't just about parking anymore. It was turning into a full-blown standoff. To make matters worse, right in the middle of this, a local reporter showed up, saying she heard about the dispute and wanted to cover the story. Suddenly, what was a private family conflict had exploded into a public spectacle, and neighbors started showing up, some cheering Grandpa on, others siding with the HOA. The whole community was watching now, and tensions skyrocketed. Grandpa's quiet stand had sparked something much bigger than any of us expected. The strangest part, we discovered that the HOA cop's repeated parking wasn't just careless. It seemed connected to a secret plan to expand HOA control over parts of the ranch, possibly for new development. That revelation flipped everything on its head and raised the stakes beyond just a parking dispute. Now it wasn't just about a truck in a creek. It was about the future of our family's land. And with the eyes of the whole town on us, the next moves could change everything, if Grandpa's courage would be enough to hold the line. As the sun climbed higher, the tension on the ranch reached its breaking point. Grandpa stood firm, facing the growing crowd of HOA officials and neighbors, his eyes steady but filled with determination. The local reporter was filming everything, capturing every word and every moment. The HOA cop tried to push his way forward, insisting they had every right to be there, but Grandpa calmly laid out the truth, showing old property deeds, proof of ownership, and records that clearly marked the boundaries. The crowd grew quiet as the reality settled in. The HOA had overstepped, and this land was our family's, protected by law. After a long, heated back and forth, the HOA officials finally backed down. The barricades came down, the vehicles left, and the community began to talk about what had just happened. Grandpa's quiet strength had turned the tide, and for the first time in weeks, it felt like peace might return to the ranch. People started to see that this was more than a parking issue. It was about respect, fairness, and standing up for what's right. But just as we thought the ordeal was over, the reporter pulled Grandpa aside with one last surprise. Documents she'd uncovered suggesting that someone else, higher up in the HOA leadership, had secretly been pushing to develop parts of the ranch for years, long before the parking dispute began. The fight wasn't just about a truck or a cop anymore. It was about a much bigger battle looming on the horizon, and the war for the ranch was far from finished. After the shocking revelation from the reporter, everything shifted. We realized the parking battles and creek incident were just the surface of a much deeper struggle over our family ranch. Grandpa took the news seriously but didn't let it shake his spirit. Instead, he rallied the family and a handful of supportive neighbors to stand together, ready to protect the land that meant so much to all of us. We began gathering documents, reaching out to legal experts, and sharing our story with more people in the community. Over the next few weeks, the HOA's plans to push development quietly started unraveling. The community meetings turned from arguments into honest conversations. People who had been silent before began speaking up, sharing their concerns about losing the open space and the history tied to our ranch. Slowly, a sense of unity replaced the division. The local news picked up the story too, shining a light on how important it is to stand up against unfair treatment, even when it feels like the odds are against you. Looking back, the whole experience taught us a lot. It showed how important it is to protect what's yours, not just property, but respect and fairness. Grandpa's bold move, driving that truck into the creek, wasn't just about stopping illegal parking. It was about standing firm for family and community values. And while the fight wasn't easy, it reminded us that sometimes standing up quietly with strength can make a difference. In the end, the HOA backed off their plans, the parking issues stopped, and our ranch remained just as it had been, free, peaceful, and ours. This story isn't just about a cop and a creek. It's about fighting for what you love and never giving up when it matters most. Thanks for sticking with us through this story. There's more where that came from.